In our last explainer, we covered what blood is. Now, we're going to get into the how. How does this amazing fluid actually do its job? Well, we're about to explore the specific physical properties that make blood so perfectly engineered for life.
So let's start with a really basic question. Why doesn't blood just behave like water? I mean, it's mostly water, right? But as you're about to see, the ways it's different, well, they have some pretty huge life or death consequences.
And I'm not kidding. The stakes could not be higher. If blood was just water, our entire circulatory system would completely fail. It couldn't carry enough oxygen, and the whole machinery of our bodies would just grind to a halt. Life as we know it would be totally impossible.
So let's dive in. Why blood isn't water.
First up, density and viscosity, the physics of flow. We're going to start with the physics of how blood actually moves through your body. And two properties are absolutely key here: density and viscosity. You can think of them as the master controls for blood flow.
So let's start with something called specific weight, but you and I know it better as density. It's a simple idea, really. It's just a measure of how heavy a fluid is for its size. You know, how much stuff is packed into it.
And here's the key number. Blood has a specific weight, about 1.05 times that of water. Now that might not sound like a huge difference, but believe me, in the world of physiology, it is incredibly important. So what's making it heavier? It's all the things that blood carries with it. All those cells and plasma proteins floating around. They add mass, and that's what makes blood denser than plain old water.
And this isn't a bug, it's a feature. See, if blood had the same density as water, it just wouldn't be able to transport enough oxygen or nutrients. So that increased density isn't a problem, it's actually a requirement. Okay, let's move on to the next property, viscosity. This is just a fancy word for a fluid's thickness, how much it resists flowing. Think about the difference between pouring water and pouring honey. That's viscosity.
And here, the difference is pretty dramatic. Blood is about 4 to 5 times more viscous, or thicker, than water. That's a huge change in its physical behavior, and it is absolutely critical for circulation.
When you see it like this, it really puts it into perspective. Look at that difference. The resistance blood has to flowing is in a completely different league compared to water. And there's a very good reason for that.
So what's causing all this thickness? Well, a lot like density, the main factor here is the red blood cells. Just imagine billions of them bumping into each other inside a tiny blood vessel. That creates a ton of internal friction. Plasma proteins contribute a bit, but it's really the red blood cells that run the show.
So why does all this matter? Because it's a really delicate balancing act. If blood is too viscous, the heart has to work way too hard to pump it. But if it's not viscous enough, oxygen delivery becomes really inefficient. So blood has to be just right. Thick enough to carry oxygen, but fluid enough to flow easily.
All right, we've covered the physics. Now, let's switch gears to chemistry and look at the pH balancing act, the chemistry of life. This is one of the most tightly controlled properties in the entire human body.
Get this, normal blood pH is maintained between 7.35 and 7.40. That range is so incredibly narrow. Even the tiniest change can cause major disruptions in the body.
So the obvious question is, why? Why is this tiny little range so important that it's actually a matter of life and death? The answer comes down to enzymes. Enzymes are the biological catalysts that run pretty much every single biochemical reaction in your body. And the thing about them is they only work properly within a very, very specific pH range.
So if blood becomes even slightly too acidic or too alkaline, those enzymes stop working. They fail. And when that happens, cellular metabolism just grinds to a halt. This is why pH regulation is a matter of life and death, not just some abstract chemistry concept. Now, blood doesn't handle this all on its own. It's a cooperative process. First, blood has its own buffer systems for instant adjustments. Then, the lungs get involved by removing carbon dioxide, which is a big source of acid. And finally, the kidneys help regulate things over the long term. It's a real team effort.
Okay, let's pause and connect all these ideas. Engineered for life, putting it all together.
So, let's just recap. Blood has to be dense enough to carry all its cargo. It's got to be viscous enough to transport oxygen efficiently. And it has to maintain a super stable pH so that all our enzymes can function properly. And this really gets to the core concept here. Blood is engineered for function, not for simplicity. Its properties are precisely tuned to do their job, maintaining flow, pressure, and chemical stability.
And if there's one sentence to take away from all this, it's this one. Blood cannot behave like water. because life cannot function like plumbing.
In the next video, we're going to zero in on plasma and plasma proteins and explain exactly how they control the body's fluid balance. I'll see you then.